Welcome back to the After Hours podcast. I'm your host, Francisco. Co-host today, I have Daniel. And we are joined with Jesse Willson out in New Zealand from the Still It YouTube channel. What's going on, Jesse?
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having me. Things are pretty good, man. Things are good.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming on the show. I know it's probably a little bit of a nightmare getting it scheduled here just because I think it's an 18-hour time difference.
Something around that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty used to it.
Yeah. I had to do the math. I was like, okay, so Jesse said this time. So subtract that, add the 2. And okay, so yesterday, we're having the episode yesterday.
Tomorrow for you.
Tomorrow.
It's the 23rd here today. I'm assuming it's the 22nd for you, or I'm more confused than I thought I was.
No, it's the 22nd. It's 5:30 Eastern time as we're recording. So
yeah, I've given up trying to do the conversions in my head. There's a website I go to, International Meeting Scheduler or something, because I've gotten it wrong so many times.
Yeah, I can believe that. So since you're in New Zealand, do you find that a lot of the media outlets that you converse with are, either English speaking or British?
For me personally, like the people I talk to, or like the stuff that's on TV?
Well, you said you've gotten pretty used to having to do the time conversion. So I assume you're doing a lot of intercontinental communication.
Yeah. Lots of the podcasts and if I'm trying to talk to people about sponsorship or products they have or consulting with people or any of that sort of stuff, it is generally if I had to roll a dice, it would be America. Probably 60% of my audience is American.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so
USA represent.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite state?
I have to be a little bit careful with this because my wife is originally from California.
Okay.
So I've been there quite a few times, which is California to me is a little bit like Vegas. I love going there for a holiday, and then I really love getting the hell out of it. Vegas, the same. But I've recently, well, not so recently, but in the past, I've taken 2 trips to Texas for Still It. And for Chase the Craft, and that has quickly turned into the running joke as my spiritual home, as in spirits. I don't know, man. There's just something about it. It's like a mix of New Zealand and America put together. I just feel at home there. Like I feel like I can spend time there and chill, rather than enjoying all the things that we don't have in New Zealand and then getting overloaded and wanting to get out. But to be honest, I haven't experienced a lot else in terms of America. There's a lot of places I'd love to go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're up in the Midwest area by Michigan and Ohio. So right now we have just been getting torrential just snowfall. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, we've gotten 3 feet of snow. So yeah, you're not missing much. I would definitely rather be in Texas right now or New Zealand.
I wouldn't want to be in Texas.
Okay. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, I think the situation's getting a little bit better there now, but yeah, it doesn't sound like fun, man. I got a few friends there that just basically disappeared off the face of the planet as far as internet friends go, Yep.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Still It YouTube channel. How did it start? And what's the channel about?
It started out of necessity for mental health, basically, man. I was working a job that had been really cool, and then the company sold to a giant corporation. Everything about the job changed. The future of the job just died. So I was stuck working a job, and I felt like I had to stay there because we'd just had our first kid, just got a mortgage, didn't feel like I could just abandon it, and hope for the best. But I knew it was going nowhere, and it was slowly destroying my soul. And I decided I needed a hobby, and I have a long history of picking up hobbies, getting insanely addicted to them, sinking hours and hours and hours into it, and then waking up one morning and going, I'm not that excited about Googling the next thing I want to learn about it. And then I realize I've wasted the last 2 years of my life on something that I've got nothing to show for it. So instead of doing that, I decided to pick a hobby that, if the stars aligned, it could turn into a side hustle income for me. That was kind of the motivation behind it. And I settled on 2 things to geek out on, 2 sources of geekery, one of which was distilling, and the second of which was YouTube. And I really liked the idea of moving from homebrewing. I was a homebrewer first, over into distilling and sort of relearning a lot of things and teaching myself all of this, the everything after fermentation that comes along with distilling that doesn't, happen in brewing. But also the geekery of the YouTube side, learning what the algorithm likes and just sort of tinkering around and having something that was a problem to solve. I guess I just enjoy solving problems as a hobby mostly. So it grew from there, man. I'd never distilled a drop of alcohol. I decided to start a channel about how to distill alcohol. And yeah, I think I'd made maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 videos before I actually got my still up and running. So the channel is solely focused on chasing the craft of home distillation, and we are very, very lucky down here in New Zealand where that is 100% legal. So it's 100% legal to make distilled spirits for your own personal consumption, which is a big leg up on most other parts of the world. And I sort of saw a hole there. It's a fairly niche topic, so the channel's never going to be millions and millions of viewers, but at the same time, there's only so many people in the world that have a passion for it, that are able to create videos and not constantly look over their shoulders, I guess is the easiest way of saying it, kind of nicely. So I realized that I had an ability to be insanely open, and I guess I want to also be, as well as just being, this is the hobby and this is the fun and the geekery of it and how to get around to making product, as well as that it's kind of trying to legitimize the hobby. So instead of being an outlaw kind of thing, I'd spent hours on the phone with our local customs officers talking about what I could do and couldn't do. And so I'm very, very open about everything I do. Anything I distill is on the channel. And I like to think it's a little bit of a beacon of hope that the lawman and the hobbyist can work together to just be reasonable on both sides, just as long as no one's being a dick. I feel like these things are possible.
Yeah, definitely.
Love it. I know it can be really hard to start up YouTube channels. How was that, starting the YouTube channel up from scratch?
Yeah, it's such a hard question to answer because it's sort of relative to what. And I think it's kind of the mindset that you go into it. I've seen a lot of other people start YouTube channels and a lot of other people be successful, be wildly successful, or just give up. I think for me, the thing that got me through those, that first couple of years was the mindset of what I wanted to do. And there seems to be 2 schools of thought on this. One is, it's a hobby, don't ever expect anything from it, put your passion into it, and maybe one day it'll turn into something. And I can kind of see where people are coming from on that side of things. But the flip side is, if you don't treat it like a job and you don't grind and you don't show up for work when you don't want to show up, how can you possibly expect it to turn into something more, to flourish into what it could potentially be? So I, from the very beginning, basically told myself that I was going to work for myself. And, I set myself a schedule. I set myself all the things that I had to do in a week, and rain, snow, hail, it didn't matter. I got it done, and didn't worry about the outcome. I guess it was more about the process for me to begin with. And that really did get me through. It's funny looking back on it now, man. When I decided to start, I said, I'm going to start and I'm going to do this for a year. 1 video every week, 52 videos. And no matter what, like if I have 0 subscribers on week 17 or 48, it doesn't matter. I've got to make 52 videos. And then I set myself goals of, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was something like, if I get 1,000 subscribers, then I'm allowed to keep making the videos if I want to, so if I had 50 subscribers at the end of the year, I quit. That's it. And I think it was maybe 2,500 subscribers. Then I had to keep going for 6 months or something like that. And if I make 5,000 subscribers, then I have to do it for another year and see what happens. And those just weren't really an option in my head. And I guess, it just meant that I could get to work and do what needs to be done, rather than stressing about what the view count was that week or anything like that. I don't know if it'll work for everyone. It's just the way that my brain processed it and made it easy for me to do, I guess.
No, I love that. I also like the fact that you gave yourself pretty much an ultimatum at the end there. You said, all right, if I don't have X amount of views or subscribers by 52 weeks, then it's over. But also, I commend you for being able to stick to such a harsh regimen, I guess is a lack of a better word, in terms of consistent output week to week, and regardless of the validation that you're receiving in terms of views. So I think that's really important for anybody starting anything, is that in order to become a master in the space, or in order to become infamous in the space, you got to start somewhere, and baby steps are always important. But following a regimen, I feel like, is the key to anything when you're starting. I mean, for Dan and I, our business, One House Software, it's all about consistency. And then same thing with the podcast, but now weekly episodes, and for you and your podcast, or for you and your YouTube channel. So keep grinding, man.
Yeah, totally. I mean, to be fair, I was lucky that from the get-go, I saw more success than I'd hoped for. So that, obviously that helps. And if it had gone the other way, maybe I would have given up sooner. Who knows? But at the same time, I've been doing it for 4 years now. And I've only basically a couple of months into COVID, I ended up losing my salary job because of COVID. And that's when I decided to switch to full-time doing this.
So at that point, 4 years already on the platform, I would imagine you already had a pretty good idea of what your like projected income would be, and like how financially feasible it would be being a full-time YouTuber, right?
Yeah. So right before COVID, my wife and I were starting to have discussions about this is actually turning into something, and there's potential here for me to just never work for anyone else again, kind of thing. And that was the dream, to be able to be self-sufficient, do my own thing, be the master of your own destiny. I can't remember what movie it was. It was some crappy B-grade kids movie, I think. And there was a quote, I'd rather be the head of a chicken than the tail of an ox. And that's kind of been a bit of a mantra for us lately. But when we were talking about it before COVID, it was it was more of an exit strategy idea. So how do we plan to slowly back off the salary position over the next 2 years? And COVID just put an axe to it, and I thought, screw it. I'm not going to find another job right now. No one else is hiring. I could just keep plodding away at the rate that I have been, or I could use all this extra free time that I've never had before and just, sink it into the channel. And honestly, man, I feel horrible for saying this, because I know how bad this situation has been for so many people. But for us and our family, we're in a better situation now than we were before COVID came along. 100%. It was a complete and utter blessing in disguise for us. It took the decision away from us. We just had to do it. We had to jump in, and it's worked out wonderfully for us.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit easier, right? When the hand is forced, you're not questioning yourself as much. And like you said, it was like a blessing in disguise. I didn't want us to be the first one to say it, because that's what it sounded like a little bit. But I'm glad that you were able to fully pivot and take that in stride. So it definitely sounds like it was the right time for you, and and for the channel.
Man. Yeah, it's funny, dude. Up until then, the best part about the growth of my channel was that it was steady and consistent. I hadn't had a single video take off by itself, so it was sort of like, you know how you get overnight sensations, and it's sort of a case of, well, that's great for you, but did you really earn it, or did you just get lucky? Mm-hmm. I hadn't had any of that at all, which was great, that it meant that the channel was actually growing steadily. But the bad thing was that I wasn't getting any explosive growth, And it just so happened that I made a video on making vodka from potato that took off at just the perfect time for us. And that, I went from getting to, I think it was 85,000 subscribers over, 3 years or something like that. That was October-ish. And my wife was joking about how it would be awesome to get to 100,000 for Christmas. And it was just never going to happen on the growth we were having. And then the potato vodka video took off, and I was at, I don't know, I think it was 120 or something by Christmas. So that was, we would have been fine. We would have been able to pay the bills without that, but that was just kind of the icing on the cake. That was the algorithm's blessing to me going full time, I guess. Just really sort of solidifying the fact that this is what I was going to do as a job now. I wasn't going to bother looking for another job when things started opening up here in New Zealand.
All right. Now I got a question about the potato video because I am a potato enthusiast. Now, I may not be a distilling master, so this might not be a possibility, but I was wondering what the possibility would be to make a fully loaded potato vodka where you got the bacon, you got the
Mm.
sour cream, the chives, the full mix of potato, and turn it into a fully loaded potato vodka.
100%, dude. It's totally doable. I've done one other thing that's kind of like that. I made I don't know what the hell to call it. I made some sort of spirit out of ramen noodles with all of the MSG laden flavorings in it, and you could 100% taste those flavors coming through. So I have kind of the idea of moving on to distilling weird ass stuff, kind of for the sake of it. Definitely has been bouncing around in my head. I'll be honest with you, I hadn't thought of doing fully loaded potato. Would you go like fully loaded wedges or fully loaded baked potato with your flavorings?
I was thinking baked potato personally.
Yeah.
Like sour cream and chives and bacon
Mm-hmm.
and corn.
Oh, yeah.
And yum. Yeah, dude, I might have to give that a whirl. I'm not
Oh, you have
exactly
to.
sure how the technique would go for that. Honestly, I think I'd probably cheat a little bit and make the potato vodka the same as I made it in that video. So just make potato vodka. Probably even do a stripping run, and then after the stripping run, add all the flavorings in, maybe even like a gin basket. So you'd make a potato vodka and then add bacon and all the stuff in as almost like you'd make a gin.
All right, so this is a follow-up question. It's kind of like a two-pointer question. So I know there's been a lot of things going on with like brewing where a lot of breweries will come up with these really wild beers where they'll have like the one I had was like a campfire beer, or they might have like a peach ring beer, and that's just like something that's been taking off recently. Is all of these really wacky but delicious beers. And so the first part of the question is, have you heard of Good Mythical Morning?
I have not. No, that's new to me.
Okay, Good Mythical Morning is a YouTube channel where they take like random foods and they say like, will it hamburger or will it taco? And they'll take random ingredients that normally don't go in a hamburger and put it in a hamburger to see if it is good. So like, for example, one might be like, will it hamburger, and it'll be like all taco ingredients. And then they'll let you know, yes, this is delicious. Or if it's something that's really disgusting, where maybe it's like just something completely out there that no one should ever eat, then they'll test that as a hamburger and they'll tell you, no, you shouldn't eat this because this is terrible. That would be, I don't know if like what the possibility of doing it. Kind of sounds like you're already doing it with the ramen and potatoes, but I don't know. It just sounds like a really cool venture to go off and finding all these really taboo things that you normally don't find in spirits.
Yeah, totally, man. I that's fun to me. I am a little bit locked in the channel because essentially every time I spend time in the shed doing anything to do with distilling, I kind of want to get content out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So doing things like remaking the same gin or the same whiskey 20 times over to incrementally perfect it, it's just not indicative of making good content. On the other hand, waking up one morning and going, what about loaded potatoes? That's fun, you know, and it's interesting for me creatively to just be able to say screw it, and it honestly doesn't matter if this is a roaring success or a complete and utter flop. It's going to be fun either way. Yeah, so that was kind of the idea with the ramen thing. It's definitely something I want to mess around with more. I'll probably try and rein it in a little bit so that isn't what the channel turns into, if that makes sense. I'll maybe try and do, I don't know, I've been thinking about it, maybe 4 to 6 kind of wacky things a year, just to give it a nudge. In saying that, I don't know, do you guys know the Whiskey Tribe at all? Oh, yes, you do. You had Daniel on your podcast, haven't you?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So on their second channel, on the Whiskey Tribe channel, they have just started a thing called Will It Distill. And the first episode of that, or the first official episode of that, was durian, as in the corpse fruit. So I helped them out with that a little bit to get the technical stuff down, and then I left the tasting firmly in there. in their court. But if that's popular and people are into it, then that's going to be something that they will continue to do, and I will continue to help them make disgusting or delicious things.
That's absurd, but
I fermented some here just to see how we could get the stuff to ferment. And our 5-year-old came home after it fermented. I popped it in the fridge just to keep it for a little while to see if they wanted me to do anything else with it, to mess around with it and try it. Our 5-year-old came home, walked into the house, pulled a giant face, ran around the house following her nose, found it in the fridge, came out and said, "Dad, you need to buy a new fridge." That's how bad it was. That was nasty, man. Real nasty.
So a lot of your videos are like just really high quality. Even like when you first started off the channel, it's just really high quality. Did you have video production skills before getting into this, or how did you go about learning all of the technicality sides of it with that, and then all the post production and everything?
No, man, I'd never made video beforehand, but I was a commercial photographer. So I understood lighting and I understood aesthetics as far as a still image is concerned anyway. And I guess video is in some ways a whole lot more difficult, but in some ways a whole lot more easy as well. If you've got something that looks aesthetically pleasing as a still image, if there's something moving in it, chances are it's kind of, it's easy to make it look aesthetic. Dude, that's funny you say that, man, because I look back on those videos now and oh man, yeah, they're pretty cringy, a lot of them. I mean, to be fair, I think it's more my presentation. It took me a long time to get comfortable talking to the camera and pretending the camera's a person rather than, awkwardly reading a script, basically. So I could transfer a lot of those skills from photography over. I had some basic equipment that I could utilize. But honestly, man, it's the same thing. I enjoy learning and I enjoy a challenge. I enjoy problem solving. I mean, I don't really enjoy any specific hobby. I just enjoy problem solving. So anything like that is exciting for me. I find it easy to get stuck in and spend hours and hours YouTubing or Googling or reading blogs or whatever it happens to be on best practices for things. The biggest thing for me was probably learning software, and I jumped straight into Premiere Pro because I already had the Adobe suite, which might have been a slightly steeper learning curve to start with, but I'm glad now that I'm in Premiere Pro, I'm glad that that's what I'm using. It's an interesting thing, man. Anytime you do anything like this, it doesn't matter who you are or what you do or where you come from. There's some set of skills that you have that's going to make it easy for you where someone else would struggle, right? Doesn't matter what you do. Like, literally, I firmly believe that something like YouTube, it doesn't matter. You're an accountant, you're a woodworker, you're a whatever. There's something that you've got that's going to make it easier. So for me, it was really hard building the background and the set and stuff because while I enjoy it, I'm not particularly proficient in that area. So I if there's people that are wanting to get into YouTube, just figure out what your strengths are, man, and lean on those hard. And then figure out what your weaknesses are and work on those hard.
Yeah, and going off of that, you mentioned that like you gotten really good at problem solving, and that makes me wonder. So you picked up the video production, you picked up learning how to distill and how to combine all this to make a YouTube channel. I was wondering, did you also come up with the branding? Because I absolutely love the branding with the shirt design and the logo and just the whole brand behind Still It.
Yeah, thanks, man. So the initial branding, it's a little confusing. The YouTube channel is called Still It, and then the overarching brand is called Chase the Craft. So Still It's kind of the almost old school baseball-y looking, medallion logo. And then Chase the Craft is the more angular, like the upside down teardrop or the teardrop with the little thing on the inside of it. When I first started, I did all the branding for Still It, and coming from a photography and a tiny bit of design background, that once again was kind of something that the process of going through branding something was something that I was familiar with and happy to dive into. And I honestly, if you're on the outside of that kind of thing looking in, people undervalue the amount of effort that it takes to get to that point. So before I'd even recorded the first video, I'd put probably 150 hours into designing Still It, on designing the aesthetics that you actually see, the logo, but also thinking about the values of the brand, for want of a better word, what it was that I did do, what it was that I didn't do, what it was that we celebrated, what it was that Still It avoided, the type of people that we wanted to attract, how those people should interact, and if they don't interact that way, how are we going to deal with them to basically tell them to piss off. There's so much that went into it beforehand that once I actually pulled the trigger, it was almost the ball was already rolling. But later on, I realized that I wanted to branch out slightly broader in some ways than just Still It. And one of the big things was that it is illegal in a lot of places to distill. So having a super sort of bland example would be, if I was going to sell stickers, there might be someone in a certain part of the world that doesn't want a giant sticker on the back of their car saying "Still It," because that's, they don't want to advertise that fact. So that was part of the reason that I decided to then nest Still It inside the Chase the Craft brand. But it also gives me the ability to branch out into other things later on if I want to. So if I want to sell a pizza cutter or something that fits other interests that I have or other places that I may go to, then Chase the Craft fits whatever craft it is you're chasing, if that makes sense. It's not nailed down to just distilling. And sorry to cut a very long story short on the question you actually asked. My sister is a graphic designer, and she at that point in time, I was already putting enough time into the channel where I just didn't have time to do more design. So I worked quite closely with her for quite a while actually to come up with that Chase the Craft branding.
Yeah, and it's really all about creating that foundation when it comes to branding, because if you have a very weak foundation, then the brand's just not gonna, if there's not a lot of time and effort put into it, the brand's just gonna suffer. So like the fact that you knew to put in those hours before putting out that first video is probably like essential to how everything has worked out for you. But going into that though, is like after you get all of the branding figured out and you're all set up, what's like the typical process for creating a video, from if you have any script writing or thinking about the plot, or not plot, but like how the structure of each video goes? How is the whole process?
For me now, or how has it evolved and changed?
Maybe let's start with the like how it used to be, and then kind of go into how it is now.
Yeah, sure. So it used to be very much scripted, and I wouldn't write it word for word, but pretty much anything that I was going to say that was not a direct flow or link from the last thing I said, I would bullet point it. And I would quite often, especially if you go back and look at those old videos, I'd be jump cutting every 2 sentences, just to stitch it all together. And I was paranoid about leaving any ums or ahs or dead air or anything in there. And I mean, it worked for me then until I got the confidence to just be able to talk. But at the same time, it didn't fit the vibe of the channel that I put in the branding, and it didn't fit my personality. I'm the guy that's always wearing shorts. I'm always wearing jandals or thongs or flip-flops. Always the scruffiest dressed in the office. I'm always the most relaxed on all the things that people that get uptight about things get uptight about. It just wasn't me. Do you know what I mean? So when I did get a little bit more comfortable talking in front of the camera, that all evolved and that changed. So yeah, so now the first thing is I need to just come up with an idea, and that might be something that I've had mulling around in the back of my head for a long time. I've got a to-do list that is easy talking head video that I can knock out the recording in an hour, a medium, and then a hard, because obviously when you're talking about stuff that takes hours to design, day to mash, a week and a half to ferment, another couple of days to distill, and then potentially a month to age. You've got to invest a fair amount of time into it. So I'll pick something off that list, and now I almost on purpose don't script anything. I think part of what I like the channel to be is that if I screw up, then that's in the video. If I make a silly assumption and do something stupid, or I assume something's going to be one way and it doesn't turn out that way, then it's kind of part of the story that goes along with it. If everything's just perfect and easy sailing all the way through, it's not an interesting story, but it's also just not real. It's not what happens in real life. And I don't know, man. I just feel like people sort of smell through the bullshit, basically. So I never script anything anymore. If it's a technical video where I'm trying to convey, how do I put it? Where it's something that I've learnt through experience or through research, and I'm then trying to pass that on to someone else, then I will potentially write bullet points that are important to kind of make an argument for the case or to convey the idea. But for a 15-minute video, that might be 8 words, 10 words on a page. And I let myself rant, man. I'm happy to talk for half an hour if I think that there's more to say about the topic, and then I'll deal with it in post. And I think that's a little bit different than I've got no plan, I don't know really what I'm going to do, and I'll keep talking and hope that something interesting comes out and then fix it in post. It's different to that. It's more, there's an argument to be made here, and it's almost like my draft. It's almost like the editing process and writing. I might say the same thing 4 or 5 times to the camera, knowing that I can then go back and see which version of what I said is the most succinct and the most natural, and the most easily digestible. If it's a practical video where I'm making something like the potato vodka, then a lot of the time goes into the B-roll and the pretty stuff. Because if you're just making a mash, for example, and it might take you 2 hours to do it, if you're just doing it for fun at home, every time I do something, everything that is critical to telling the story, you got to record it, and recording it from the same angle with the same, lens, with the same aperture, with the same lighting is just boring. So every single thing you do, you're picking the camera up, you're moving it, you're figuring out the best way to show it, to make it interesting. What camera movements can I put in here to try and give the viewer some visual stimulus, just so it's something different. So a 2-hour mash might turn into 4 or 5 hours worth of recording often. And then the same is true of editing too. That stuff's a lot heavier in terms of getting it cut together, because I guess the point in doing that is to make it look a little bit slick, to drop something that raises the production value into the middle of the video to break up just the talking head. Almost by definition, you've got to lift your standards and put a little bit more time into it. And sometimes that's a grind, man. Sometimes that sucks when you just, you're behind schedule and you just need to get the video out. But more often than not, I actually really enjoy it. It's kind of exciting to see it develop in front of you. You spend so much time getting so much footage, you dump it all onto a card, and you're sitting there with 200 gigs of footage for one video. And it's almost like opening Christmas presents from your past self, discovering what you actually recorded.
No, yeah, the best part's always hitting the render button, right?
Dude, unless it craps out, which it has been doing lately. I've been having issues where especially when you're behind schedule and it's 1:00 the night before the video's got to go live, and you get 99% and failure.
Oh.
Something happened and we don't know what. It's up to you to fix it.
Now here's the question though, getting to the technicalities. So you said you use Adobe. Do you have Mac or PC?
PC, dude. Yep.
Okay, see that I normally am an avid PC fanatic, but when it comes to Adobe, I realize I gotta go Mac just because it works better. So I literally recently just bought a Mac just for that reason, because I would have the same problem where I'm working on a video and you know what, I think I'm gonna crash right now is what Adobe says, and I cry a little bit. So
He's so irritating. It sucks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was an avid Mac user all through my photography days. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the process. I loved the software. And then I looked at upgrading and kind of realized the difference in cost to raw performance that I could get with a PC and the customizability that I could get with a PC. So I made the jump. That's been probably 3-4 years ago. I was getting a lot of crashes about 2-3 months ago, and it was because I was being slack, man. My hard drives were full, and I knew that I needed to make a few upgrades. So I dropped a little bit of money into not a new build, but just upgrading the build that I have, and now things are running tickety-boo. But eventually, yeah, I don't know, man. I am kind of considering going back to Mac as well.
They both definitely have their pros and cons. Like, I feel like Mac just isn't user friendly. There's a lot of things I just really hate about it. Like, if you eject your hard drive, your external hard drive, and it didn't want you to do that, it might delete everything. There's just, but then like with PC is good at certain things. They both just have a lot of pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I go through phases of wanting to really geek out on stuff too, on completely unrelated topics that having a PC is really nice for. I mean, if you're in any space where it's kind of crowdsourced software, if you're in any space where you're trying to do something where you're trying to do something that the manufacturer of that product don't really want you to do, it's almost better. It's almost always better to have a PC because there's someone that's built something for that, But then you go back to the other side of things where you just want things to work, and as long as that thing is something that Apple decided that you should be able to do, then yeah, my experience has been that as long as it's the standard use case, then Apple seems to be more reliable. But I don't know, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I feel like that was enough of a tangent. Going back to distilling. What's your favorite part about running the channel?
Oh man, 100%. The favorite part of the channel was something that I never thought about before I started it, and that is meeting awesome freaking people. Like just having discussions like this. How would you and I have ever talked to each other if it wasn't for this? It gives me a license to reach out to random people that are literally heroes to me and say, will you talk to me for 2 hours on a podcast? And sometimes they say yes. I get to go and visit. Obviously I can't at the moment, but I'm hoping soon I'll be able to start planning another trip to somewhere in the world and, line up 10, 15 cool craft distilleries and drop in and spend a day with them. The people you meet, the people that are in the hobby itself, the hobbyists, it's, I don't know, man. It's very, very cool. And I am by nature a bit of a hermit. I just stay at home and don't do anything. I don't like to go out. My wife drags me out if we're going to go visit friends or whatever. And I always enjoy it once I get there. But having something that kind of forces me to be a little bit more outward and forces me to create connections with cool people professionally has just been, that's 100% the best part of it, man.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say me and you are pretty similar. I mean, I'm in that same vein where I definitely am more of a homebody. And what you said earlier about not always dressing the sharpest definitely resonates with me. I mean, I'm definitely a guy that's more comfort over, looking sleek all the time and more of a homebody. But
there's a reason there's no videos to the podcast.
But yeah, no, it's definitely a blessing in disguise. Just get to meet just a bunch of cool people through the podcast. And I can think of one scenario in which we would meet, even if you didn't have your YouTube channel. And that would be as if your wife forced you out to a bar in New Zealand called Carousel Bar in Dunedin. And we visited because they were one of our previous guests and our only other guests from New Zealand. So
I didn't know that, man. I didn't know that. New Zealand has flourished with breweries and bars in the last even in the last 5 years. I started brewing and it was really hard to get good quality craft spirits in New Zealand. craft beer in New Zealand. Now we're kind of awash with it. It's pretty cool.
So do you sell any of what you make, or is it specifically just for the purpose of the YouTube channel and for the enjoyment of making all of the different spirits?
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, this is it's a running joke. Anytime someone asks me what I do, it inevitably boils down to this question, and then it takes a long time depending on whether or not they know YouTube and Patreon, and they've discovered those platforms before to describe it. But the easiest way I've found to say is that the product I quote unquote sell, or the product that makes me money, is videos, and I make spirits to be able to make those videos. So it's legal for me to make spirits for my own personal use, which means I'm not allowed to give it away, I'm not allowed to trade it, I'm not allowed to barter it, I'm sure as heck not allowed to sell it. But then it's not the spirits that's being sold, it's the video on how to make it. I will be honest, man, we did kind of, my wife pushed me to look at getting all the certifications and licenses necessary to have a commercial distillery. When we found out I was losing my job, that was kind of, well, maybe this is what I put, my day job hours into, and the YouTube channel remains the side hustle. It just didn't seem right for me. It wasn't a good fit for me. The success I've had so far has revolved around content and sharing knowledge and community, and reaching out to people all over the world. And a distillery would have forced me to do the opposite. It would have forced me to spend long hours cleaning and producing, basically. And a distillery is one of those things. It's much like a brewery where you put so much freaking money into getting set up. And then on top of that, my passion is brown spirits, which take a long time to age. So if I was going to make whiskey or rum, you have overheads for 2 to 5 years before you make any money whatsoever. Yeah, it didn't seem like a tenable short-term goal for us. So I don't know, man. Maybe one day, but honestly, probably not. The thing that I'm more interested in and more excited about doing would be collaborating with existing distilleries, existing breweries, existing companies that are already in the space to create co-branded products, to create collaboration products. I sort of see that would be something that I'd be excited to do. That would sort of push me into the commercial world. But yeah, not running my own, I don't think.
With COVID, have you seen an increase in channel views? Because I imagine, two things that I've seen are people spending more time on the internet. One, because of COVID, and two, alcohol consumption going up. At least within my friend group.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah, dude, totally. That was kind of part of what I was saying earlier. When I feel like a dick for saying it, but COVID's been good for me. I'm lucky we're down here in New Zealand. There's no place I would rather be. Doesn't matter what I'm doing right now. New Zealand has kind of, I don't know, man. We've got it lucky. We had a long, hard, fast initial lockdown. But then since then, it's just completely opened up, and it's basically life as normal. You do whatever there's no restrictions on anything we do. And you just log in with an app wherever you go. So if you want to go to the movies, fine. If you want to go to a restaurant, fine. If you want to, my kid just had their school camp and all that sort of stuff. But there are places where that's not the case. And funnily enough, I saw a huge spike in numbers coming from South Africa when they banned the sale of alcohol and cigarettes. Big spike in basically whatever country is going into a more harsh lockdown, for sure. People... and I don't think it's just the alcohol consumption part of thing. I think it's people have realized that they are so dependent on so many external things for everything. If we can't go to the shop, how are we going to feed ourselves? How are we going to stay warm? How are we going to teach our kids the curriculum that they need to know? So I don't know, man. I don't think it's just... My guess is that it's not just alcohol. I think it's anything that's kind of that homemade, DIY, self-sufficient, look after yourself kind of thing. And it turns out that alcohol's got a lot of really good uses if shit hits the fan that isn't just getting drunk. It's a good antiseptic. It is good for, you can light fires with it. It's fuel to run things on. And it's good for bartering as well. So if you can create your own high proof spirits, then if you're one of those people that is a little bit more, wanting to be prepared in case the zombies come, then alcohol's not a bad idea.
Oh yeah, we're big apocalypse planners. No, not really, but that'd be crazy.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I am. All the food I eat is all refrigerated and frozen, so the lifespan on those guys are 4 to 5 years.
Okay, but what happens when we get power gridded and then we have no electricity and then all of it thaws?
Well, I'll just use all of the alcohol I have to make a fire and cook it up.
Okay, all right, fair enough. You mentioned that you were a photographer. Now, I mean, now that you're in New Zealand, right? So it's like, I mean, that's one of the most gorgeous places in all of the world to shoot. Are you a landscape photographer?
No, man, I was very much wanted to be commercial photography. So it was like I kept saying, man, I enjoy solving problems. So if someone comes to me with a problem that happens to be a photography problem, that's kind of my happy place. That's my fun thing. I like helping people make money. I strongly dislike helping people preserve memories, if that makes sense. So I could not be a wedding photographer. I could not be a portrait photographer. It would drive me mad.
Okay.
But dealing with, and honestly, man, I couldn't care less what it is. If there's a cool company that I've got a glue stick sitting in front of me, like, fine, I can help you sell that. That was kind of the stuff that I was into. The dream stuff would have been, I really enjoy making things look epic and kind of hyper real, badass sort of stuff. So, action sports, any fight sports sort of stuff, movie posters, all of that sort of stuff was really interesting to me. But I also live in New Zealand, man. There's 4 million people here. Well, pushing 5 now. And we live in a small town, even for New Zealand. So when that first photography job, it was actually in fashion. I was working for a fashion company, which is hilarious after describing the way I dress and the way I act. I did not fit in there at all. After that sort of fell through, that was when I started thinking it's time to start taking the skills that I've got and apply them, sideways. Find something different to do.
Makes sense. You had to transition from portrait to landscape. I understand.
All right. So one of the videos I saw was you were crafting up a blueberry liqueur, and it looked very delicious. How was that? 'Cause I just want that, because that was one of the questions when I asked you about if you were selling your stuff. That's just like, I saw that, I just wanted to buy it.
It was good, man. It was really good. Unfortunately, it did discolor after a little while, and it kind of tasted the same, but it kind of went a brownie. It just sort of. I guess it would be, it oxidized. The brightness came out of it, and it didn't look so appealing. Still tasted fine. We've polished it off pretty quick anyway. Blueberries are a funny thing to me, man. When you eat a blueberry, blueberries don't taste like blueberries to me, which is, I'm not insane, I promise you. but you know how you when you go to eat something, you have a predefined flavor of what blueberries or what anything's going to taste like before you put it in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And blueberries to me are always one of those things. If you actually stop and think about what is this, like, try and pinpoint the flavor that's going to happen in your mouth before it happens, and then eat a blueberry, those two things don't match up for me. And I think it's probably just I ate too much of shitty blueberry, something made with esters and, I don't know, blueberry candy or whatever it happens to be as a kid, maybe. And I've got that stuck in my head. So it was interesting from that point of view. It didn't have a full-on blueberry flavor, but it had this really awesome sort of earthy, not savory, but yeah, it's hard to describe, man. It was really, really good. In saying that, a lot of people have written in since and commented on the videos that obviously know much more about blueberries than I do, and they were saying that the variety of blueberry that I was using probably wasn't the best, to use something else instead. We've since become kind of acquaintances with the people that own the blueberry farm where we pick those blueberries from. And they have multiple different varieties of blueberries there to choose from when you go and pick. And the ones that we picked for that use, I believe, were the ones that are big and awesome looking, but are not as flavorful as some of the other ones. So if I did it again, I'd go and pick the other blueberry and give that a nudge, and potentially even mess around with a little bit more, throwing something in there to enhance the flavor slightly. So try, from memory, I think I used honey in that one. So it'll be interesting to try a few different types of sweeteners, different things to put in as back sweetening to see if they would bring the blueberry flavor out a little bit more. Potentially even doing a mixed flavor, so vanilla, or I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. It's fun to mess, man. It's fun to change things up. I've never made anything that I wouldn't change if I made it again.
Do you have any favorite recipes?
Like I said, dude, it's a little bit hard for me because when I make a recipe, I never quite know what its actual potential is. I make something and then I move on. I don't get to. If I didn't have the channel, I would be the sort of person that would want to make it and then make it 10 times over with a slight incremental change each time to see where I could really refine that recipe to. And I don't really get the chance to do that very often. In terms of the stuff that I have made, my passion is brown spirits. That's what I really like. So I'd have to choose from that. The South Island Peat is probably technically the best thing that I've made so far. That's still aging and it is getting quite delicious. It also has a cool story. My favorite commercial beverage is Isla Scotch or peated Scotch. And Gladfields, shout out to Gladfields, one of the local craft malt producers, they dug some peat out of the ground in New Zealand and then smoked their malt with that peat. So it's the same style of malt that's used in Isla whiskey, but obviously instead of being Scottish peat, it's New Zealand peat. And there is a very interesting, not so subtle difference in flavor profile that comes from that. So that's really fun. On the other end of the spectrum, I've made a recipe not so long ago that utilizes some beginner equipment, which is the T500 still, and is kind of it's like a next step recipe. So if people know beer, it's the analogy of going from a kit and kilo kit up to all grain. It kind of sits in between those two things, maybe like a partial mash. So it's half all grain that doesn't use any additional equipment. It's just the T500 that you mash in, and then you mix it with a sugar wash kind of as a safety net and a bulking agent to give you more volume. That's turning out nice, but it's not so much about the specific recipe. I'm excited about that because I think it's going to be a cool platform to be able to go through and use the same technique or the same recipe style and then apply it to Irish whiskey or bourbon or whatever else you want to make, rum for example.
Definitely. What would you say is your favorite weapon of choice when distilling? So like wheat, rye, corn, potato. What do you think is the most versatile?
That's a tricky one, man. I'd have to say barley.
Okay.
Just because it I mean, if you had to have one thing, I would say barley, because you can malt it and you can have a really high diastatic power if you want. You can malt it and create specialty malts from it. You can have it raw. It's versatile in so many different directions, and it makes so many other things possible too. So if you're going to make a bourbon, for example, and you don't want to use bottled enzymes, then you're going to use malted barley to get the diastatic power you need. So if you're sort of doing things the traditional way, there's a whole host of other ingredients that are made possible solely because of malted barley. And like I said too, dude, I've just got a soft spot for single malt.
Absolutely. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
What is one thing that you wish you would have known when starting off the Still It channel?
That's a really tricky one. It's kind of hard because I almost like the mistakes, man. The mistakes led me to where I am now. And if I didn't make those mistakes, I am a simple man and I learn more from screwing up than I do from getting it right. But I think probably I've already touched on it in this podcast, and that was the idea of just chilling out and letting go and letting things happen, and being okay with being vulnerable and being open and honest isn't the right word. It wasn't a lack of honesty. It was just not trying to be something that I'm not. I wish I'd figured that out earlier.
Authenticity.
Yes, that's it.
Do you know why like home distilling is so like heavily regulated in other parts of the world, and why it's pretty loose in New Zealand comparatively?
Oh, dude, there's so many different things that go into it. I mean,
Oh, really?
yeah, it depends how you want to look at it. I at the end of the day, the thing that I really truly believe is that it's the way it is because that's the way it is, and it's hard to change things. If there isn't, I mean, look at weed, marijuana becoming legal in a groundswell across America. It's because there is millions and millions and millions and millions of people that are pissed off and openly vocal about the fact that it's not. Which means that the politicians have not even just politicians, but people in power in general have a vested interest in doing it because that's what the people that they make money in and make a career off want. So they get to look good to those people, and you know what I mean? Whereas there's actually a lot of people that home distill that are kind of romantic about the idea of being an outlaw, which I think is batshit crazy. I think it's silly, but that there's a lot of people that just happy to stay quiet and do it in their shed and don't ask, don't tell kind of thing. And in conjunction with that, there are forces that sort of fight against it, depending on how conspiratorially minded you want to be. Basically, the tax man wanting his cut, and the big organizations that make it a lot of money out of alcohol not wanting competition. I think there is an argument for and against those. It just comes down to perspective of the person looking at it, I think. I mean, for example, like look at the beer world, dude. Home brewing led to craft brewing, which led to people spending higher amounts of money on less alcohol. So that's more tax dollars for less people getting actually drunk, which is how as a government official could you not celebrate that? I believe this exactly the same thing would happen with craft spirits. People start drinking for flavor, for exploration, and I mean, I drink so much less now than I did before because I've got it on hand and I enjoy the process. And in addition to all of that, there's all these stereotypes about the sort of person that home distills, and there's also all of this, like a huge amount of misinformation about the safety of home distilling out there. And you put all those things together, and it's just the way it is from and I don't know, man. It needs some large catalyst to give it a nudge to change it. And I really, really hope that others get to benefit, that others get to enjoy the freedom that I have in the hobby. But I don't know. It's a tough road to get that changed, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It is weird though that like that there are such varying regulations between brewing and distilling, even though like there is definitely some overlap there. I would like, you know what I mean? Like I'm very surprised that they're just so contrastly different.
Yep. Yeah, it's totally legal to make your own mead, wine, beer. I mean, like, I don't know if you guys are Reddit users, but if you are, check out Prison Hooch. It's hilarious. People just brewing alcohol from whatever the hell they can find. It's a great follow on on Reddit. Completely legal to make cornflakes into whatever you want to call fermented cornflakes, but you're not allowed to run that thing through a still. That's a big old no. Yeah, I don't know, man. It just seems very hypocritical. It seems uninformed. And the fact of the matter is that New Zealand is a great example of the fact that all of the things that people that sort of all the detractors of legalizing home distilling don't want to talk about New Zealand because none of the bad stuff's happening here.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, in America, like there is like this perception, right, of like a home distiller. You get somebody that's like a little bit more redneck, maybe like in a trailer park, like, oh, hey, Darlene, grab the moonshine, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, there's definitely like that is portrayed, like, especially in cartoons where people have like the jugs that say XXX on them.
Yeah.
Like the cartoons, you know what I mean?
I know. I just really like that accent.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I mean,
yeah, totally, man. That's exactly what jumps to people's minds when they think of home distilling, right? And it won't even be called home distilling most of the time. It'll be called moonshining or some other word that
fair enough.
has sort of some kind of derogatory attachment to it. And yeah, sure, dude, there's people out there that are doing that. And I mean, I am not an advocate whatsoever for anything. If you're making booze to sell illegally because you don't want to get a license and you don't want to pay tax, you're an idiot. And I've got no time for you. I think you're just silly. You're ruining it for everyone. And you're basically peddling a drug illegally, because that's what it is at the end of the day. It's a drug. So I'm not advocating for that whatsoever. I'm just saying that, dude, if you're a grown ass human being, you should be able to make the choice to either do it or not do it yourself. Like, surely, I mean, especially in America, the supposed land of freedom, it just seems silly. All the other things you can do. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a bone of contention with me for sure. I've had a lot of long and heated discussions with people about it, and there is a group of other YouTubers that are in America that, I don't know, man. We're biding our time. We're trying to find the right time and exactly what we should do to try and be able to put the word out there a little bit and sort of. Maybe all it does is change people's perceptions a little bit. Maybe it starts getting people that would like the freedom to be able to distill at home, to be able to be a little bit more vocal about it. But the big thing is, man, it's not people just wanting to get drunk and not pay tax or not pay someone else to do it for them anymore. That's not what I think of when I think of home distilling. And there is a huge community out there that proves that this is true. It's doctors, it's lawyers, it's architects, it's plumbers and janitors, and the scope of the type of human being that's involved in it is just insanely wide. And once again, it's because one of those hobbies where if you're an accountant, you bring something to it. You can help the hobby benefit from it. If you're an electrician, you can help the hobby benefit from your skill. Yeah, and that's both in, it makes you bring skills to the table that make you a better distiller, but it also means that you're bringing skills to the table that helps everyone else, because it broadens the group think almost. It adds another perspective to things when people get together and talk on forums and all of that sort of stuff. Once again, exactly the same thing that happened with homebrewing beer. Exactly the same thing. Have you guys ever seen the I've been trying to find the damn thing for ages, the ad that they made. I think it came out of California, the I'm a Homebrewer 2 ad.
I have not.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it, unfortunately.
Oh, it was the same kind of thing. Before it was legalized, they were trying to change some sort of law, and the stigma was, if you're brewing beer, you just want to get drunk, you must be an alcoholic. And it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek ad that had all these people standing in there. It was almost like they were opening up at Alcoholics Anonymous. There was a speech they're giving, and the punchline was, I'm a home brewer too, like real tongue-in-cheek, saying they're all criminals, but very obviously pointing out the fact that they're just geeks and they just enjoy the craft of it. Anyway, same thing. I'm hoping the same thing will happen with home distilling.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the greatest innovation is going to happen. Like you said, like the same thing is similar to the craft industry is like, I mean, the people that are currently running, the spirit world have been doing it forever, and it's an ancient craft, but I feel like there's very little innovation that is coming along with it. And then you have people that really care about it and passionate and, like you said, geek out about it. Obviously there's going to be great things that come with those strides as well. So can't wait.
Totally, man. If you want to see innovation in whiskey, check out Texas whiskey. That is very, very cool. Some very cool things happening there. And I thought for a long time too that it was the same sort of thing, that it was kind of stagnant. It was like the big whiskey was stagnant and just doing the same thing. But you have to remember too, man, that if you want to experiment and try something new, you don't know if that experiment's working for potentially 10 years. You do something different, you put it in a barrel and you wait for 10 years. And then you think, oh, that didn't quite work the way they wanted it to. So you tweak it and then you wait another 10 years. It's a very generational game, especially if you're in a climate like Scotland where it takes that long. And one of the advantages that Texas has is that they've got the opposite problem. They're trying to get whiskey in a barrel for longer, because after 2 years they're getting to a point where it's over oaked and they have to get it out of the barrel. So I think that the more we see new regions open up for spirits, the more we're going to see innovation almost as a function of necessity. So the terroir in spirits is often underlooked, and as people start creating spirits in new areas and new places under different climate, soil conditions, whatever you want to, ingredients, they're just not going to work the same as Scotland or Kentucky. So people are going to say screw it and just do it different, which is freaking awesome. And it really is starting to happen now. It's very, very exciting to be following craft spirits right now.
Yeah, definitely. You should really check out our podcast with Traverse City Whiskey.
Okay.
Traverse City Whiskey Co. up in Michigan. Yeah, I don't know if you have, but it's just great because the guy that we interviewed, Chris Fredrickson, he is the founder of TC Whiskey. Mm-hmm. And how it started was he found his grandfather's patents for home distilling. So just crazy in itself. But then, like you said, when he first started out, it was like, all right, I'm going to make some barrels of whiskey here and I'm going to give it 3 to 5 years and then we'll see if this can be a real thing. But that was really a great episode. And being that it's the whiskey of the North, that's their mantra. Michigan experiences all 4 weathers in very extreme conditions. So that definitely plays a part in the barrel and how the whiskey is formed throughout its lifetime. So that was a really great episode and very informative in terms of whiskey distilling.
Dude, that sounds like I'm going to check that out for sure. In fact, that sounds like someone that's on the short list for someone that I should reach out to, actually. That sounds...
Oh yeah, they're all phenomenal people too. Like their PR manager and then Chris too. Like they're just a bunch of great people over at TC Whiskey. So love them.
Awesome, TC Whiskey. It's on the list. I appreciate it
for sure. And you said that, like, this is very off topic, but you said that you like to problem solve and critical thinking. Well, there's this game we've been playing around the office called Geoguesser.
Oh my gosh!
And the premise of the game is that you get dropped somewhere random in the world, no context. And you have to use what limited view you have of panning around a camera to find out where you are. So you have to use street signs, language, URLs on like different trucks and stuff. So right. I don't know. It's a very critical thinking game.
That sounds exactly the sort of game that I love to play, other than the fact that my geography is shocking. Absolutely shocking, dude. I can't put a map of the world together to save my life, let alone know where countries are or what's in them. it's a gaping hole in my knowledge, so I would 100% suck at that game.
I'll tell you what, though, it is a very good way to get a lot more familiar with scripts for languages. You definitely understand a lot more about their scripts. You understand what countries are driving on the left-hand road versus right-hand side of the road, botany and climate, mountains. So you definitely get a feel of playing the game of like what should and shouldn't look right based on where you are in the world. So it's a really good learning experience, if nothing else. But just thought I'd say that.
Yeah, sounds cool, man. I'll have to check it out.
Frankie's weird.
We play the weirdest games, and that's another discussion. But, yeah. So some Kiwi stereotypes, right? Is one from what we heard from our other podcasts with Carousel Bar out in Dunedin, is that they actually follow American politics and American news like daily. Like that is that really pretty promoted, I guess, in terms of what you consume day to day.
Yeah, I've just checked out, man. I can't do it anymore. I've got
neither can we.
Yeah.
I've got so much bandwidth and so much attention span, and using it up on something that probably won't ever affect me, and even if it does, it's kind of ridiculous. I've checked out. I don't really go on Facebook anymore either. I use Facebook for Messenger, and I use it to sort of drop in on the Still It page and the Chasers of the Craft group every now and again. I've got some really awesome mods there helping out with that now as well. So thank you to you guys. Shout out to the mods. But honestly, man, other than that, I just stay the heck out of it. Okay. But they're very, very right. There's New Zealand is very much, it looks to America for a lot of things. Like I think the rest of the world does, man. It's just the media that's out there that's consumable on whatever platform it is that you want to look at. So if you want to look at Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, just the sheer amount of content that's coming out of America is so big that wherever you are, because it's now a global sort of village, the chances are most of the people that you're following are going to come from America. So, I mean, even for me, I don't do any news. The closest thing that I would ever get to keeping up to date with current affairs would be skimming through Reddit. Most of that's coming out of America. If you watch YouTube and you want to figure out how to, I don't know, rehang a door on a hinge or how to fix your car, chances are it's an American that's going to help you out with that. If you're watching Netflix you get what I'm saying, right? It's just, if you're not in America, you're very, very aware of what America is doing because it gets kind of jammed down your throat. And especially in the age now where it seems like people can't make a show to put on Netflix without having to advertise their political beliefs one way or the other within the show. It's omnipresent. American politics have showed up everywhere.
It's so crazy because this is definitely conceded, but being that we're in America, all of the content we consume is, I would say, for me personally, is like 99% English speakers from America. And then like some people I follow are from, Australia or from Great Britain. But it's just weird to hear that perspective because we never really hear, like BBC News, right? Like, the British broadcasting, like we don't follow that, but apparently they follow MSN or, Fox, whatever.
I think it's also a case of, it's funny, having the YouTube channel has made me think, I think that's very much part of the reason why I don't follow any news outlets anymore, because they're not there to give you news. They're there to make money. And if there's not something interesting to talk about, they're going to talk about something anyway. And the best way to make money is to talk about something that isn't interesting, but convince you it is interesting. And I guess what I'm getting at is when you're in a country of 4 million people, there's only so many interesting things that can happen on a daily basis. Our news runs out of things to talk about. So they talk about America because that's where the craziest, weirdest stuff's happening. Partially because, don't take this the wrong way, guys, but you guys are kind of nuts.
Oh, absolutely.
But also, it's just there's so many people there, right? You get that many people together and something weird's going to happen every day. There's something to talk about on the news.
Oh, 100%. No offense taken to that.
No.
Just living here day to day, you see some crazy shit that doesn't even get put on the news. Like, especially where we live. In Toledo, Ohio, I see shit daily that would be like, okay, I could need news coverage if it really needed to be.
Yeah, whereas us, it's, so there's still more sheep than people. Thank you for our news. Now we're on to the weather.
Do you have any questions for us?
No, man. I do need to go back and listen to some of those podcasts you mentioned, though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Traverse City Whiskey Co. That is an awesome one that I know you will enjoy. 100%.
Yeah, definitely, man. That sounds really, really interesting. That sounds like a very cool reason to start a distillery.
Mm-hmm. That was awesome. Yeah, I guess, Jesse, still at YouTube channel. Make sure to check them out. And are there any other platforms or anything you want to promote while we're closing the show down here?
Nah, man. Find me on YouTube. Still It. Look for Still It or Jesse Still It or Distilling or whatever it happens to be. You'll probably find me. Big dude with a beard If you want to see everything I do, then you can check out chasethecraft.com, and that'll link out to everything.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was fun.
All right, After Hours Nation, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to stay updated, you can check out our site at afterhourscast.com. Don't forget to tune in next Tuesday morning for our next episode. After Hours Nation, stay thirsty, my friends.